So Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez um, recently held an interview, and it was published in New York Magazine, and she's getting a little bit of pushback from it, from what she said. Now, asked for a profile by New York Magazine about what role she would play in it, it basically in a Biden administration, she basically groaned and said, "Oh God, in any other country, Joe Biden and I would not be in the same party. But in America, we are." So now I have to say, where's the lie? Well, there is no lie. In America, we only have two viable parties, which basically are locked in a cycle of feeding off each other. And they do so that, and they end up rigging the rules to maintain the duopoly because they require each other to survive. I mean, look, you look on both sides, right? Oh, the Democrats are evil and terrible, vote for Republicans. And the Democrats say, well, the Republicans are mostly correct, but you should vote for Democrats anyway because we're slightly better. That's how bad this situation is. But look, in other countries, you have sometimes 5, 6, 10 plus different parties. And you look, usually the main ones that do pretty well are a conservative party, of course, a progressive one, and more centrist. And again, a smattering of other parties, sometimes single issue parties, sometimes parody parties. You know, for example, Monster Raving Loony Party in the UK. There's people like Lord Buckethead, and I don't know what party he's into. Kind of interesting, though. I do kind of like the bucket. But look, again, you've got a whole list of other parties that you vote for, but and that you're able to do in a parliamentary system. And look, the way that it works is basically whatever party gets the most seats ends up governing. If you don't get a majority, then you have to reach out to others to make coalitions, and that's generally how it works. In America, that's a way different system. And so that's essentially what she's pointing out. I mean, it's just factual information, right? So, look, when it comes to wings of the party, I guess you could think of those as maybe parties within a party. But overall, again, we've only got two parties in the country, right? Now, some of the different wings inside the Democratic Party is blue dog, yellow dog, progressive, corporate establishment, etc., right? And there's not a whole lot of wings in the Republican Party. There's the so-called moderates, but even they are massively conservative. And so I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a Tea Party wing. But anyway, the whole point is what AOC is saying is incredibly true. And yet she got some backlash on Twitter for it. There's a lot of Biden supporters or people who are not in favor of progressive politics. They went after her. For example, you had a former Obama administration and campaign alum, Christopher Hale. He said, quote, "For better or worse, there are more people in Joe Biden's wing of the Democratic Party than AOC's. In fact," he says, "there's no pathway to a governing majority without the Joe Biden wing." Now, what is a Joe Biden wing, right? Now, look, if you're talking about people that are in power, well, then he's right. There are more people that are part of the corporate establishment that are in office. But when it comes to the voters, look, when it comes to Democratic voters, progressive policy is actually really popular among them. For example, 81% of Democrats support a Medicare for All system. That's according to a Kaiser Family Foundation poll. And this has been constant over the past few years. Polls consistently well with Democratic voters. Let's go to a Hill Harris X poll, also taken last year, found that 72% of Democratic voters are in favor of making higher education both tuition-free and eliminating student loan debt. There's only one candidate that's running for president, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez endorsed him. I'm just saying, these are policies that are progressive, that are from the progressive wing of the party, not the Biden wing, but from the progressives. And this is how the voters, Democratic voters, feel about it. Green New Deal. 87% of Democrats support it. 61% support it strongly. Are these people part of the Joe Biden wing of the party? Again, the politicians seem to be, because you have a lot of corporate establishment politicians that have won that take money from large corporations, but they're not in sync with the Democratic voters. And that's the big problem. And so another problem here, and I think that these are two related things, is that you've got the media, you've got the establishment that constantly attack politicians that support these ideas. I mean, they're too radical. Pie in the sky, unicorns, puppies, and rainbows. You progressives with your ridiculous purity tests. Why do you hate Democrats? Stop attacking Democrats. Bow your heads and support corporations. And that's it. Well, I say no. AOC says no. Bernie Sanders says no. We will not bow to corporations or the establishment. We're going to fight for popular policies that Democrats actually want. We are more Democrat than supposed members of the Democratic Party. So, look, now Biden, to be fair, Biden has not attacked AOC directly. But I think maybe it's because he realizes if you get into a Twitter fight with Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, you're going to get your ass handed to you. But, look, he said this. And this is, it's super condescending when you read it. But he said that AOC and the squad were both brilliant and really smart, but said that their political ideology is just not representative of most elected Democrats. Well, look, okay, that's a fair point, because right now we have elected Democrats that are all incredibly pro-corporate. And how do you think they win? It's because they spend all their time begging rich corporate donors for cash and then doing their bidding and not doing progressive policies. Now, AOC, she raised a lot of money. In fact, she outraised a lot of Democrats, but she didn't do so by taking corporate money. No, she actually gets donations because she represents the people. And by the way, since she doesn't take corporate money, she doesn't have to dial for dollars. So she can actually spend her time representing her district. Now, let me give you some more quotes here from AOC. This is great. She also said that her party's lawmakers too often work to appease the interests of their most conservative members. She's absolutely right. One example is that the establishment gives aid and cover to people like Henry Cuellar. Henry Cuellar is a supposed Democrat that votes 70% with Donald Trump. And then you got people like Joe Manchin, same thing. Or former Democrat turned Republican, Jeff Van Drew. These were all people that are supported by the establishment, the supposed Joe Biden wing of the party. And they're considered to be quote unquote moderates, but in reality, they're basically Republicans, somewhat socially liberal Republicans. They even supported Claire McCaskill. Claire McCaskill is a loser, right? She lost to Republicans. Why? Because she went even more conservative. Why vote for a conservative Democrat when you could just vote for a Republican? Now, she has a name for these Democrats, and she says, and this is funny because when she got elected, she remarked that, look, people were asking me, are you going to be the Tea Party of the left? Well, now she turns around and she says, I'm not the Tea Party of the left. You guys are. She says, what people don't realize is that there is a Tea Party of the left, but it's on the right edges, the most conservative parts of the Democratic Party. Interesting. So now that implication is basically saying, look, these centrist Democrats are basically Republicans that have taken over the party. They have usurped the Democratic Party away from its working class roots. And I think that's a really important message because it doesn't get talked about enough how Democratic Party used to be progressive. We used to be the party of FDR. But then in the 1990s, the DLC and Bill Clinton came in and said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to be more pro-corporate. We're going to favor rich people. We're going to reform welfare. We're going to reach out to the right wing, to the Republicans. We're going to deregulate industry. That's the plan. And they've been doing the Clinton plan for decades, ever since. And that has led, of course, to the loss of the working class and regular working people all over the country and progressives as well. And so, look, that's what she's saying. And she is absolutely correct. And she ends by saying that the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which she's a part of, she says, look, there are some people in the Progressive Caucus, and I'm not going to name names or anything, but they should not be part of the Progressive Caucus. Why? Because they're not progressive. And they have shown so by not supporting progressive ideas. She said, quote, they let anybody who the cat dragged in call themselves a progressive. There's no standard. And I know you're probably like, purity tests. How dare you put in some standards? Why shouldn't we have standards? We're the Progressive Caucus. Maybe people who are progressive on policy should be involved in the Progressive Caucus. Because look, if you're if you're somebody who thinks, oh no, rich people, Jeff Bezos does not need to pay more in taxes, and we do not believe that healthcare is a human right. Now AOC actually did say, look, it's not as if those people are the enemy. It's just that we don't agree on policy. Right. Well, then you should go and join the Blue Dogs. You should be a conservative Democrat and not part of the Progressive Caucus. That makes sense. You can't go and call yourself a progressive when you're not a progressive. And that's her entire point. And I think that's a valid point. But again, they're going to scream purity tests, right? Well, it's not a purity test. It's a standard. And by God, we should have some standards. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.